Welcome to the 43rd edition of Podcasters, today with Michal Stanislawek from Poland. Welcome, Michal.
Hello, Doran. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Please introduce yourself.
So, my name is Michal, and I have a problem describing myself usually because I'm a builder. My background is in technology, but recently I've been building companies rather than products. So probably about 5 years ago, I ventured from the media world into conversational AI, and that's when we set up utter.one, which is an AI lab. We've been working a lot with creating conversational experiences in general, but also doing some R&D, things like cough detection on dedicated devices, next to, Alexa skills and, Google Actions when they were still around.
That is a good description. You basically moved up the food chain.
Well, I guess so. I mean, it's a different playground, I would say, right? A bit more challenging one than just working on products, but I think it's an interesting challenge, and I'm always up for an interesting challenge.
And how is the conversational AI community in Poland? Is it strong, or is it big?
Well, I wouldn't say it's big, especially that I've mostly been focusing on the global conversational AI community. I'm not sure if you had the pleasure to attend one of the voice launches, but back in 2020, in March, when the COVID restrictions hit, right? Together with Karol Stryja, we said, look, we're not going to attend a conference. And we were just back from Munich, I believe, from All About Voice. And we were like, damn, we're not going to be able to attend any conferences. And Pete was canceling his conference at the time, I think. So we were like, okay, so let's find a way to meet people online. And that's how it started. And we started meeting, initially with a group of people, and then it sort of exploded to, different, meetings, in different countries, in different languages. So that was an interesting experience. And that's how I learned a lot of people in the global voice, and conversational AI communities.
Oh, well, in that period, actually, I was started with conversational AI in 2019, and the actual project we were building at the time, we basically started right at the beginning of COVID. So we were running like crazy, getting people. We had teams. People were working in teams who we had never met personally. Seriously, I still haven't met them. They did great work, but so it was a different way of working. And actually, it sounds harsh to say, but COVID was sort of a blessing in disguise for conversational AI, because people all of a sudden, okay, we can do things from a distance. Technology does support us. We can work from home, et cetera, et cetera. So all of a sudden, it opened a lot of doors because people saw, we need more than just people to get work done.
Oh, absolutely. But, from my perspective, we had high hopes when it comes to people being restricted. And, we thought that this is now the time for voice. This is now the time for conversational AI. And certainly our expectations were more inflated than the reality that actually emerged out of all of this. But it was an interesting experience. And I remember that at the time we had one of the most popular games on Google Assistant in Poland. And we were hitting insane numbers of people, of users using it monthly. And we were hitting over 100 monthly unique users on two game skills in Poland, which is
100,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely insane. And everything was pretty much organic. I mean, Google, you can say a lot about Google, but generally the actions that we were able to build had interesting mechanisms that we've used that were bringing organic traffic, which was absolutely awesome. And it's still quite unique to Google, actually.
And now you just said you have Utter, the company, and
Yes.
right, and that's also you're working with AI. And the reason I came across, well, we were connected, but the reason we came, I invited you in the first place because you had this statement. It said in an article, the decline of ChatGPT, and then if you read the story, there's a whole story to it. But there is a fundamental truth underneath, and maybe you can elaborate on. You wrote that article or that post on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
Why did you write it? What did you see? What do you see happening in the business that you thought I put it out there? Yeah, I see the same thing, by the way.
Mhm.
But I want to know why you saw this and you brought it out there. And I looking at the reactions, you had quite some reactions from people experiencing the same.
That is true. I definitely hit a nerve. But the background for it is we have been working with quite a few solutions. So some of them proof of concepts, some of them solutions that we're actually developing for customers at the moment that are conversational AI-based solutions. And for the most part, they're hybrid NLU and LLM. But we were observing decreased quality of text being generated in Polish, right? And this is something that we paid close attention to from the very beginning, because obviously us being located in Poland, we really wanted to test the multilingual capabilities of LLMs. And initially, we were blown away. We were like, this is the best thing that ever happened. And goodbye, Google Translate, right? Um, but as we were working with it, and as we have been testing the same use cases, we have seen this steady decline in the quality of the output, right? It's not something that we were able to accurately measure in any scientific way. It was just different words being used, or words that shouldn't be there, like made up words that you've never seen before. And initially, we were sort of thinking, we must be going crazy, right? We must be imagining things, or it was bad and we haven't noticed it. But then we started talking to other people, and other people started reporting similar experiences. And then finally, the push, the actual moment when I decided to post that LinkedIn post was when I read the paper that I actually mentioned in the post. Uh, and yeah, I understand that people are disputing the research behind it, but it actually confirmed what we were seeing, right? Our own experiences. So I thought it was important to discuss this in a wider setting.
But if we zoom out, what does this mean for the people using LLMs and thinking, oh, it is the way to go? I'm not saying it's not the way to go, but uh, there's a meaning to this, or we should be worried about things, I guess.
I don't think we should be worried necessarily. I think that we need to be cautious, right? We need to approach as a bit of a black box that they are, right? And every time you're doing any software development and you're interacting with a black box, you put some checks on the edges of that black box, especially where it interfaces with your system. And obviously, with LLMs, there aren't many good automated ways at the moment to do that. But certainly there are things that you can do from the process perspective to make sure that you're monitoring the quality of the output. And this is what we've been doing. We've been having same test cases that we keep repeating, and at this particular point, we're using people to analyze the results and compare them. And you know it might sound like, I understand that this post might sound, catastrophic, but it isn't necessarily. I see this as a challenge. I see this as something that we need a workaround. My mind doesn't think about this in a way that the quality is declining, so we're going to find something else. Like right now, I still think that, and that's what we've been doing with tweaks around prompts, for example. We were able to get better quality. It feels like this is going to be a constant, ongoing process to refine and to adapt to the changing nature of the LLMs. There's definitely, a bunch of things that can make our lives easier as people who are building with LLMs. And, these are the things that people all around are pointing out, clear release notes, for example, making sure that we understand when something gets changed underneath so that it triggers, even for a simple thing like it triggers us running the test cases again and seeing and comparing and potentially reacting to it. And there's a saying that I like, that software is never really finished. It gets a new meaning with LLMs. It will truly never be finished. It will always be an ongoing project with that until we work on known snapshots, on snapshots that will not change, that will remain fairly consistent. Obviously, as much as those models can be consistent in terms of output, but yeah, I think it's not necessarily catastrophic news. I think it's just one of the things that we need to learn. It's a part of our. I treat it as a part of our learning curve. People who are building the LLMs.
To me, the article sounded a bit more. I don't think it's catastrophic. You got to look through the clutter, but it sounded more like a wake-up call. It's like, guys, you have to be aware of and of course, people are warning for the inherent risks. But this is one of the model develops, and so it might look like you covered it or managed it, but you haven't. And it sounds a bit like there's like a cat and mouse game with the LLM, where the LLM develops and you need to keep up with the development of the LLM with what you have around it or how you use it in order to make it work properly or get the right output.
Well, especially with ones that are hosted for you, right? Like OpenAI, and ones that are proprietary and closed. It's going to be a slightly different story once we really start embracing, what happened with Meta, them releasing Llama 2. I think it's going to be a slightly different story, and it will give us more control over, the actual models that we're using, the fine tuning, and what we can really expect in terms of output from them.
Yeah, because the development of the models, although that is great that they develop, it also makes them in a sense unpredictable. And in a business, you need a certain level of predictability. Especially, for instance, if you're in financial services and you have the government that oversees your actions, you need to be predictable. The same customer with the same parameters should have the same outcome. But if the model develops, then you can't guarantee it has the same outcome, even though the parameters are the same.
Well, see this, I see this as a double-edged sword, right?
True.
On the one hand, this is what gives it the great qualities, right? The conversations that people can have with chatbots or agents developed on top of LLMs are basically something that we were striving for, when we were building with Dialogflow, or Lex, or all these other tools. We were always trying to get to a point where these conversations are natural, and for them to be natural, they have to be slightly unpredictable, because if we can predict everything and if we can code for everything, then it's gonna end up being robotic and automatic, and we've all seen that. But on the other hand, obviously, you don't want the financial institution to build a chatbot that, says or gives advice that, you would never give. And I can understand how the legal teams from a lot of enterprises at the moment are very cautious about touching this. But, at the same time, I also see, and this is what we've been telling to all the customers or leads that we talk to, is that this is a perfect time for experimentation, for trying to find use cases and processes that are on the edges, that are not necessarily critical, but will give you the experience of working with these technologies, and actually, finding places where they can be really useful despite these certain amounts of risks.
Could you give some of the examples of use cases you guys have seen in your lab passing by, where you say, okay, this is on the edge, it's safe, but it's a good way to create an experience within a corporate environment?
So anything where you have people involved in the process. So we've been working with a company that does a lot of production for audio and audiobooks, right? And they have a challenge to do QC on the audio once it's recorded. And normally, it's a task for a person. But with technology, with AIs, and by AIs I mean multiple AI models. It's very rarely just a single model in the entire workflow. You can come up with workflows that might not necessarily exclude the human from the process, but limit the amount of work that they need to do and speed up the process significantly. And we're talking from weeks to days, or from days to hours in certain cases. So this is where we've seen, and these are not necessarily even customer, like end user facing experiences, but they might allow a company to get more familiar and more comfortable with the solutions that involve AI models.
Let's say data scientists. Of course, there's been a big shortage of qualified people. If you now look at, I recently looked at the number, I forgot, but there's these pages. They collect new applications based on AI or the models that are out there, the LLMs. There were like a few hundred applications already, that proper application that basically replaced the data scientist that could do the analysis and the graphs and everything for you. Of course, these are quite limited on the one hand, but if you look ahead, basically, if you could run that locally, because you don't want to put your data in the cloud somewhere, I presume, that would sort of push out these groups of people that have studied for a long time, and all of a sudden the computer takes over and does it faster, better.
Well, I don't see them being pushed out necessarily. I think that they will need to find different like aspects of what they're doing. I like, especially with the example of data scientists. I I can't see how the demand for data scientists, especially around models and more foundational models being built constantly, is going to decrease. But there's certainly going to be areas, like we see artists on strike at the moment, copywriters, screenwriters, and people that are generally in the creative space. I definitely see that we're on the edge of a huge shift, but it doesn't necessarily mean that these people are going to become not needed or redundant. I generally believe that AI and those models are here to complement us, not to replace us in a lot of ways. And that's what we try to find. And whenever we speak to customers, is we're trying to find those places where we can improve the performance of a specific process or a group of processes, but not necessarily from a perspective of how can we eliminate humans from it.
I agree, but there's this thing. Always in every profession, there's this group of people that embraces new tech and new developments, and a group that probably sticks to the old ways. And what I see, and maybe what I predict, is that the people who stick to the old ways are going to be stuck because that work will be done by AI or LLMs or whatever. They will need to up their game because there's a different role. You will use the outcome, but you need data scientists to actually understand what happened and to judge whether what we see makes sense based on the data. But they won't be, I presume, they won't be programming anymore to make Python programs and stuff like that to do the actual analysis. That can be done by the AI.
Well, yes, I definitely agree. There will always be people who will be, stuck with the horse and the plow, right? When tractors emerged, some people saw them as as something that is devilish and that they would never use. Yet, the world embraced it. But there will definitely be these people who will still, plow their field with a horse. And that's okay as well, because, as we see, there's like the world is so huge that there's demand for, pretty much everything. It's just that there's going to be this shift, like making people more productive in general, and also, democratizing. And I know that these sound, like everyone's talking about. I truly believe that AI has the potential, especially AI that is available to everyone. And now with the open source developments, it's even more important. AI is going to democratize knowledge.
I agree.
So not knowledge that was not accessible to people in, I don't know, rural parts of Central America, for example, somewhere deep in the rainforest. Now with the access to the internet, these people will have similar access to knowledge as anyone else in the world, and that can make a huge difference for them. And it's really just one single example, but I think that this shift has a huge potential to do a lot of good for the world.
I agree. It will do a lot of good. But isn't there a worry that if you say that productivity will increase, that the impact it will have on output will go up? And if you work for a boss, then of course the demand for higher output goes up as well. Because you say, oh, you're using AI, I'm paying for it, so you should double the amount of output. Isn't that also going to cause societal problems inherent to the use of AI, where already, because of the use of internet and everything is connected, we expect instant gratification or instant satisfaction? That will go even further because later on we're going to test something connected to education. And you said knowledge, and I connect knowledge and education. If you think about the impact of AI and the fact that you could upload a book somewhere or a study book, just a text and the notes from the class, and you can just say, test me every day, make as many questions as you can, test me every day in every way, form and shape. You could even do that via WhatsApp. Send me a question and I'll send the answer. If it's wrong, send me the part of the text, telling me what I needed to reread. If you think about that, that's suggestive, but what do you think the impact will be on schools, universities, and higher education after you've started working? If I look at my kids, they look at YouTube videos and other stuff, and they teach themselves faster than we ever learned in school.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. My son, and this is a story that I'll make public at some point. But my son,
he's okay with that.
Yeah, he's been teaching himself, English from YouTube videos, for example, since he was little. But that's nothing compared to him developing a circuit board, or he's got this amazing passion for connecting things. So one of his projects was connecting old car clusters. like the speedometers,
Yeah.
to games, right? And he ended up designing his own PCB, ordering it somewhere at a factory that manufactures them, and actually selling a bunch of them as well. And he started that when he was 14. He's now 15, 16. And it's amazing because that was not knowledge that I had that I could pass on to him. And he never had any training at school for that. Everything that he taught himself was from YouTube and the internet in general, and that's pre Chat GPT and AI. Now, if I apply this AI concept of having these, I don't like to call them assistants, but I do like to call them co-pilots, and I think Microsoft did a brilliant move, sort of grabbing that word. If we're entering this era of co-pilots, anyone could have a co-pilot that will help them, for example, do electronic design if they are interested in it. And yeah, that will have a big impact on schools. And I think schools that are mindful about their students will embrace AI and will embrace the technology and the tools that it provides as part of the teaching process. Because after all, at the end of the day, these kids, these students, when they go out to the market, they ideally have a competitive advantage that the school, the university gave them. And if the school or university is going to be opposed to new technology, is going to be opposed to those tools, it will end up putting out students that at the very start, at the very beginning, if they haven't done things on their own, will be at a disadvantage as compared to people who are out there who they can take leverage from this. And there's this whole concept of intelligence amplification, which Brian Romelli has been speaking about quite often. And I subscribe to it. I think that, at some distant future, from the day we are born, we would be able to have a companion that, learns what we learn and can remind us, can, become our almost second brain, to, gather the experiences, but also amplify us and our capabilities when we need it the most.
It's funny you should say this, because we touched this subject with a futurist, Thomas Frey, in the podcast, and he has this concept, this idea of where basically you get rewarded for everything you learn. Why would you only get a degree for something you learn outdated knowledge in a university or in a school? Why wouldn't you be awarded for knowledge that is actual and of today and gets you ahead today, not yesterday? He said it's really weird. Why can't I build a diploma on microlearning and just stack all that one on top of the other? It's really an interesting thought because it connects to what you said. But what I see is, and I fully agree with what you said, by the way, but what I see is that schools and teachers are, even though some of the teachers are young, they're totally not prepared for this. They have no idea. They're discussing, well, I can say for Holland, they're discussing how to deal with ChatGPT and plagiarism. And of course, we know OpenAI just pulled back the tool to detect whether something was written with AI. They can't. This is really interesting. They were taken over by their own technology or surpassed. So if you look at that, how do we get schools and universities and especially the teachers and professors ahead in such a way that they understand that, embrace the technology and have the kids or the students follow that path and start using it, because you can use it in any study or any profession, basically.
Yeah. I don't have a good answer for you, unfortunately, on this. I think it's a $1 million question at the moment. How to convince people in general, but teachers in particular, to actually embrace those tools. But I think that this is something that is already happening. Quite a few schools are actually embracing this as part of their curriculum,
In
and I
Poland.
think yeah, I see this in Poland. I see this from like news and Twitter posts from pretty much all across the globe. And obviously, there are going to be people who are going to be focusing super hard on those detection tools. But following what I said earlier is, I think that we should be focusing on empowering those students to use those things because they will use them. And to be fair, we will never have a foolproof mechanism to say that somebody did or didn't write this with the help of it.
Yeah, I saw the other way around because someone got expelled or got a very low grade because the software said it was made by AI while it wasn't made by AI. So it has another effect that people who actually do the work get punished for doing the work.
The funniest example of this that I remember is when somebody fed um, with the works of Shakespeare to one of those detection engines. I can't remember which one right now. And it said it was generated by AI. So, who knows? Maybe, Shakespeare was just a time traveler from the future, backed up by some future version of ChatGPT.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Although, if you think about it, quite unlikely as well, right? So it's easier to assume that we won't have good foolproof ways of measuring whether something has or hasn't been written by AI, which brings me to the next point, which is like empower those students to actually use it, like encourage them to use it, because again, they will enter the workspace at some point, and they can either do everything themselves and spend 2 hours, or they can use the tools in a reasonable, mindful way and get the job done in 15 minutes or an hour, right?
I would like to add the word responsible or responsibly
Yeah,
to that
yeah,
because I think that's where schools and universities should push forward and forget about the plagiarism because it's a cat and mouse game, and these kids are way smarter, so they'll figure out a way to be smarter than that one system. Actually, there's already ways they're documented. It's not that hard, but teaching them how to judge whether something is good, real news or fake news, how to use AI responsibly in order to filter out the good outcomes. I think that's far more important than checking for plagiarism because it's not so relevant, to be honest. And
100%.
if they make it in the world with plagiarism and nobody catches them and they're successful, who cares?
Well, exactly, and that's the main thing. We care so much when we're in the university. We care so much about this, that, and the other, and then you start working and you start doing business, and suddenly all those things are like, meh, whatever, you know. Um, so yeah, so it's been a constant challenge, with universities versus the reality of life after university has been a constant battle for ages now. So I doubt we're going to see a quick and a good solution for this going forward. I just truly hope that universities, especially universities, will embrace this technology, and also to a point of potentially utilizing all of the material that they have created over the many years to actually do something with it that will empower those students and will create their competitive advantage based on that academic knowledge that they gathered across the years.
And that goes especially for engineers, but also for doctors, because the amount of scientific knowledge is, increases exponentially. There's no way you can keep track of that. So the only way to do that is to automate or use AI or other technology to get you the proper information. And what you see is they're very formal and sort of scared. And I also train doctors, and you see the reactions that they're afraid that they might lose their job or their added value. But if they understand, if they embrace the technology, they become so much better doctors because they can get the right diagnosis faster, can see more patients. Here we go about productivity.
Yes.
But this is about helping people getting better or hopefully getting better. So what I'm trying to say is there is this, people are sort of scared, and I haven't figured out a way to take away that being scared or that feeling. Also in large corporations, you see the same thing. If we go back to conversational AI, you see this fear, and I think it's partly justified. What if we introduce LLMs or AI here? We can't control it enough. We don't want to put our data in the cloud. Are we teaching or training the LLM instead of that the LLM is working for us? So you see all these fears, and some of them are justified. And what you see is there's a lot of demand, but when it gets actually to the point where they have to make the step and do it, you see that, let's turn it down a notch and then be more careful. Do you recognize that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the amount of conversations that we had since end of last year about, the use of ChatGPT or LLMs in general in solutions for customers just goes through the roof. The amount of solutions that went even to a proof of concept are still tiny. So, that tells us that a lot of people are still very cautious about it. But on the other hand, they're experimenting with it. So you mentioned doctors, for example. We've been talking to quite a lot of doctors as well, and something that a lot of them won't admit publicly is that they actually do enter symptoms into ChatGPT, and they are looking at what ChatGPT provides. And this, on one hand, this amazes me, right? But on the other hand, it scares me as well, because if somebody is not using this mindfully and responsibly, as you said, it can have devastating consequences. But it tells me also one thing, when this is coming back to the fears, is that people will be using it, regardless whether you give them the tools or not. And this is to the brands that are considering it. If your solution won't be flexible enough, people are going to revert to different sources and different solutions that will be flexible and that will give them that ChatGPT type experience, especially when it comes to conversational interfaces.
I just beginning of this week, I tested an application. It was based on AI based, of course, where they pulled product reviews of healthcare products, which are off the shelf. And you entered whatever your problem was, and it would give you the product with the best customer reviews. Now, let's assume the customer reviews are real. Of course, we can doubt some of it.
Debatable.
Yeah, but I was looking at it, it's like, this is a totally different approach to medicine or looking at things. Of course, we know that you can do the same thing for regular medication, right? We know some medication works better than the other, even though it's made for the same disease. So if people enter their problems there and make it detailed, it connects to what other people have filled in. So, but all of a sudden, the whole internet, which otherwise would have been impossible because you would have to search so many websites, it's impossible. Here it pulls all that together and creates sort of a statistical relevance
Mm.
per item. And I was in shock. I was like, oh my God, this is these manufacturers are not going, unless they use bots, but they'll filter that out too. They're not going to be able to do any marketing. It's useless. So the whole online advertising part for that, it's it's going. I think it's going to be useless if you use an
Yeah.
LLM to get that data. Basically, it was pulling data. It was data analysis.
Well, the question is whether, we're going to have a mass consumer product that actually does this. And then yes, or we're going to see like, there's like, generally those type online marketing in general doesn't like void, right? Whenever there's vacuum, there's something else that gets created in that place. So I think that if something like that gets to mass consumer adoption, then we're going to see the other side of the equation try to produce as much positive reviews for that or it's going to be the next SEO basically, right?
I agree, but that's also scary because what can you believe? So um, everybody's looking for the next thing, how to influence an LLM in order to produce whatever you try to do now, or the result you try to achieve with online advertising. That's sort of the next holy grail. I don't know. I don't think anybody has a solution because it's content based.
Mm-hmm.
That means you have to put out, I don't know, 500 websites with content slightly different. You can do, by the way, you can do that with AI. But and then have the LLM scrape that and use it for training their model, and then somehow it should pop up. But I don't think that's going to work.
Well, it can go in so many different ways that it's hard really to predict what may happen, especially in a dynamic in such a dynamic space as this is. But one thing that is important to note here is that I think that this whole thing, including deepfakes as well, is teaching us as consumers not to trust anything anymore. Can I trust, somebody calling me, who sounds like my daughter, speaks like my daughter, right? But calls from an unknown number and says, I've lost a phone and please transfer me some money. Can I really trust that this is my daughter, right?
Or spoof the number. That can happen too.
Or even spoof the number. But generally, we are now being taught as consumers that we can't really trust our senses anymore, because you could be seeing me, or I could be Morgan Freeman, not even looking like Morgan Freeman, but speaking like Morgan Freeman, right?
That's after the
With
edit.
Yeah, I guess. But this is the important message, and this also goes back to education. Like, kids from very young ages right now should be taught in schools that you can't really believe any digital form of anything, including video, because what you're watching might be something that is not real.
But isn't that a scary thought? If you zoom out, then and there's so much content out there. Of course, we're contributing to that. But if you zoom out, that is scary. If you can't trust anything, how do you know that what you're learning is right? Because that it could even go for the material you get in school, because the government determined that that's what you have to study. How do we know it's true?
That's a very good point, and this is where the open source nature of a lot of the LLM development plays a big role, because up until you have these alternatives that are not necessarily owned by governments or big corporations, you have the alternative, and you can verify and you can check, right? As long as that is gone, you no longer have the option. But it's not too different from what we've seen in the past. I mean, obviously, being raised in Poland, I've been raised in the communist times, when we had censorship, and the government generally controlled what people were informed about. It's like it wasn't so much different to such scenario, right? If you look at North Korea at the moment, it's not so much different. You basically, as a typical North Korean, you don't have access to any outside source of information, which effectively puts their government in full control over um, the information that reaches people. It's just, let's say, more old school without the use of LLMs. So I think it's super important to embrace and to support the open source alternatives that are out there. And I also think that this is going to be an important point for enterprises, and it's whereas sometimes open source was being considered a second choice. Right now, with the LLMs, with the models, with the ability to fine tune them on your own data, I think it's gonna change, or hopefully it's gonna change.
So are these big models, these big companies like OpenAI, are they going to survive, or are we all going to run for the open source?
Oh, they will definitely survive. They will definitely survive. They are in the forefront of the development, and I I think that there's always going to be a place and a market for those solutions. Also, um, I had the pleasure of meeting Sam Altman on there was this event in Poland, and he was a guest speaker. Um, and after the event, I had the ability to ask him a question, and the only question that I asked was, "Do you see OpenAI as an API provider, or do you see OpenAI as a platform?" And I was expecting him to say that we're an API provider, we're a provider of technology. And he said that they don't know, which is quite
Interesting.
significant, because it sort of forces you to think that at least they're considering becoming the assistant app, you know, um, and which is supported by, the plugins and the plugin store, which I had higher hopes for. But definitely it is where it is. I guess speed was more important than getting it right. Um, but yeah, I think where we live in super interesting times where OpenAI, as we know them right now, might not be the OpenAI that they will be in 2 years' time.
That is an interesting thought. And how do you see that related to what we're doing in the conversational AI space? Because, of course, a lot of companies and platforms are still working with intents and utterances. If you zoom
Yep.
out, that becomes totally irrelevant, almost totally irrelevant. I think if you do the other part with an LLM right, you could maybe not yet, but almost. You can skip that. So these platforms have components that they can, well, wouldn't say throw away, but they're not very useful anymore.
I don't
How do
think
you see that
I
developing?
Yeah, I don't think NLUs are going to go anywhere anytime soon. So I think that there's still going to be, for the foreseeable future, there's still going to be a place for those intent-based solutions where you've got a known and a rigid solution that, takes customer, the user from point A to point B to point C. Um, but what I see happening, and this is actually what I see happening with us. Right now, we're almost not building just intent-based solutions. Um, Most of the stuff that we're building is at least hybrid, or it's mostly hybrid NLU and LLM combined. There are obviously still challenges with that. When you listen to the side that is excited by the LLMs, like LangChain this, LangChain that, and you could do everything with it, and you sort of can to a point. But when you start diving into more complex workflows and solutions where you need to manage the state and the context across different aspects of the conversation or different processes and flows, it's like the LLMs are great for those very simple solutions where you're like upload a document and ask a few questions about it, and that's it, right? As soon as you get to a solution that needs to be more robust, then that's when you have to find or build solutions that are not necessarily out there on the shelf. But yeah, I don't think NLU is going to be made, redundant anytime soon. I think the hybrid solutions will definitely rise. But for the foreseeable future, I see most of the conversational AI being built actually as a hybrid rather than just LLM only.
And do you see conversation designers still making all the intents and utterances themselves, or using LLMs to generate that? Because I saw one platform where it sort of built that in already, where basically you enter something and then it starts some text, and it starts generating as many questions as you ask it to generate, and the answers, and then you curate, and then you say yes, it's right, it's right, it's right, and then it's stored, and once you get the question or almost that question, it comes up with the right answer. So the role of the conversation designer is changing.
For sure. Even, and this is actually a question that I asked on LinkedIn as well some months ago, I guess. Right now, it's like, how do you design for LLMs? You no longer create those typical VUX flows and designs. We now have to find a different way of even visualizing this, which is especially important when you think about this point where you connect the conversation designers and developers, right? We almost need to come up with the same language that they can speak in order for the solution to actually reflect what's being designed. So the role of the conversational designer is going to change quite significantly, and yeah, and actually conversational designers that think LLMs are bad and will not be used and don't embrace them are going to have a hard time.
Like a lot of other professions.
Yeah, unless they work at a bank, because I can still see banks having IVRs for a long time.
Well, I can see them having IVRs, but I don't know what's happening in Poland. But in Holland, they're closing down almost every office. I mean, we have neobanks, of course. They don't have offices.
Yeah.
But the regular banks are sort of turning into neobanks as well, because they're closing one office or one branch after the other, and serve customers via an IVR or phone or internet or extranet or whatever, or chatbots. And I think that if you look, for instance, at a loan approval, it's actually, besides the data behind it and the GDPR, the privacy-related data, it's actually quite a simple process. There's business rules, and either you fit in or you don't. If you don't fit in, they can check if you're a special case and a reason why they still could give you the money or lend you the money, or it's just a no.
Yep.
Fact-based. And you can upload documents. We can extract all the data. It's not a problem. So there is hardly any reason. If you have business rules, it's really simple to use all these models to make an approval system. Right now, it's really they made these systems really, really difficult. But if you think about it, it can be done. It's not that exciting.
Yeah, I think that the change that you're mentioning in the banks is actually not caused by the development of the conversational AI or the conversational capabilities when it comes to technology, but I think it's actually an outcome of the internet, right? Because it's a generational change. It's a change where
The
people
internet and these guys.
exactly. It's a change that is being forced by the users, because when I think about my dad, for example, he used to go to the bank. He doesn't anymore. So that changed for him. But when I see my kids, they wouldn't even think about going to a bank.
They've never seen a bank from the inside.
Why would they do that? Like, there is no point, right? You've got everything as you shown on your mobile, or in your computer. It's like there is no need. So I think it's quite symptomatic of what we're seeing. And it's like with everything, the younger generations will dictate what technologies are going to be prevalent in the coming years. And it's interesting to observe that whereas people my age are not using, for example, the voice recordings or sending voice messages that much. The younger generation, I see them doing it all the time. And obviously, it's not a quick change, but these young people will enter, the workspace, the workforce. They will enter the workforce in a bunch of years, and their expectation is going to be to do what they've always been doing, and suddenly the work space will have to adapt. So yeah, and generally, generally systems are a reflection of what the organizational structure is. So I think it's good that banks are closing, because that means that the organizational structure is changing, which then gives hope that the systems that are built within that organizations are also going to adapt to that organizational change.
I agree, but I'm afraid to say that the adaptation rate is not the same as the closure rate of branches. They're not. It's not the same curve.
Well,
And what I
that
see
is
is that
true.
the old people the older people who basically rebuilt our countries and have a lot of the capital, um, they're not really served anymore by the regular banks. So what you see is that they used to go to a branch and talk to
Mhm.
someone, sit down, or go inside, get their cash. Um, of course, they can go to the machine, but if the branch is gone, then there's no one inside who can help them if there's a problem with the machine. So what I see is that as fast as we go with the younger generation, somehow we leave some people behind, which shouldn't be left behind, because they're an important part of our society, and they've created ours. I mean, they were at the basis of, I mean, the wealth we have now.
That's true. But, if you look at the technology in general, right, I see that more than ever, we are actually thinking about the older generation, and we're creating solutions that, and that I think, for me started, or I started observing this more, when I looked at, the Alexa skills, that were being developed, that were targeting specifically the older generation, the companions, the dedicated assistants, and robots that are being built to assist, older people. I think that, um, yes, the times are changing and the world is changing around us. And, it's never an easy process, but I doubt it was ever easy for older generation. Um, but right now we're doing things that previously the older generations didn't have. Is and I mean those dedicated solutions. And I think this is clearly visible actually in the conversational AI space.
Um, yeah, although what I see in Holland, probably not as much as in other countries, we're sort of lagging behind. And
Hmm.
I do feel that what I see in Holland, that we're forgetting the older people um, for the greater good of the profit line, the bottom line profit of a lot of companies. I think they forget sometimes who created those companies, who made them big, um, and those are the older people, and a lot of them, some of them are in old people homes and need more help and assistance and are lonely, but some of them aren't. They just don't want to change the way they lead their lives, and they're being forced to. And of course, on some aspects, it's great if you talk about WhatsApp or FaceTime or that kind, to be connected.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, internet banking, if you're old and it's hard to read and you have to do that on your phone, it's really small
True,
and it's really hard.
true. But, I'm lucky enough to have a grandfather and a grandmother. Still,
Wow.
I'm beyond 40, by the way. Um,
Then you're really lucky.
and And my grandfather is actually using online banking, not on his phone, but on his computer. And he actually quite like it, quite, likes the experience. Well, maybe he doesn't like the experience, but, he embraces it to a point. And I think that this is also good for him from a perspective of like, keeping his cognitive abilities, in check and in line with, the world. Because as you said, the world is evolving, the world is changing, and at some point, you will have to go to that ATM, which is effectively as a computer, right? Or you're gonna have to, use that kiosk or something. So it's somewhat forced adoption of certain technology might actually have the added benefit of then being able to use something that is completely different, but also moved with time.
I think there's division because I'm fortunate to still have my mother. But when my father was still alive, he did all the internet banking on the computer, not on the phone. But my mother, she's turning 82. She's like, no, I understand it. And she was very willing to change it to it and do everything in online banking. Because at some point, because she was signing the bank transfers, and then they would come back because the computer didn't recognize the signature. And can you imagine the impact of that? Then you all of a sudden feel really, really old. And I explained it. It's like, okay, you can control everything in the internet banking. It's much easier, and you have full overview. There's no mail getting lost or whatever, or time delays. It's just instant, and you can time everything. And but she's not touching it. We're her kids. We do it for her or with her. She sits next to me. We do it together. But she will not touch the internet bank because she's just too afraid she makes a mistake and she can't correct it. So there's also this threshold. They haven't grown up with it, and they're too afraid. They're quite afraid to make mistakes. And that's what she tells me about her friends. Same story. They all need help from their kids. They're lucky enough to also have kids to help them. But I think you and I, well, I'm a little bit older than you, but we'll get to a point where we need help from our kids to get the new tech done or things done in the future with tech we don't even know is going to be there. We don't know it right now. But I'm afraid that that's what's going to happen to us as well. I'm not afraid of it.
No. I agree with you, and I'm not disputing this. That there are definite challenges that the older generation faces. But I also think that we're going to face different challenges, but also challenges with technology and with technology moving fast. Especially that generally it feels like technology is moving even faster than ever. So when we're really at an age where it's hard for us to keep up, we're going to face, I want to say, similar challenges. Probably not similar in a sense of the same, but we're going to face challenges similarly.
Yeah, it's a comparable situation, although the tech will be further and more complex. Having said that, we were talking before about educational tech, and something crossed my screen. I'm like, hey, this is interesting. I showed it to you. So I made a test account. Of course, like always, we're going to test something. It's called Mind Grasp, and supposedly it's for educational purposes. And I am going to share my screen.
I love educational bots. That's actually one of the things that we're building for a customer at utter.one at the moment as well.
Can you elaborate on that, or can you?
So we're working with a company in Poland that's called HeyEdu, and they have been in the space of results-based education, where you had human assistants, basically taking people through certain topics and giving them tasks, but also rating those tasks and certifying that these people have actually proven to use the knowledge in practice. And right now, in order to improve their processes, we've actually built it, and now we're in the process of getting it deployed and testing with the students. We've built an assistant. It's rather a co-pilot, something that helps them with the most mundane things. So to relieve the human agent to be there for the things that really need the human assistant, which means that they can ask questions about a particular task. They can, get information about where they are, what they need to do. The whole experience is gamified, so it's slightly different than, being a part of an online course or an e-learning site. So you don't get to, see ahead, but you're being almost made to focus on, your tasks at hand. And it's an interesting challenge because, it requires quite a lot of context and context switching. But also first tests, beyond, that being slightly slower than we would like it to be in terms of like latency, the obvious things, back and forth with the APIs. The reviews are quite positive, which is interesting to see.
And does it run in WhatsApp or on a website or Teams?
It runs in the website because that's where the students have access to, and that's where all the other contexts live. So at this particular point, it runs on the website, and obviously going forward on the mobile as well.
Okay. Well, let's have a look at Grasp .ai. You sent me a document. It's called OWASP Top 10 for LLM. I uploaded it as we agreed. And that was actually on the previous screen. But the problem is, if you go back, then it disappears. You have to re-upload the document. I tried that once already, accidentally. So here you can do smart notes. I have no idea. Shall I?
Okay. Yeah, let's do that.
Something went wrong.
Oh.
Well, of course, that's what happens when you test. Let me try again.
It's slow.
Of course, but that's okay. That's part of the process. See, here's I didn't save the document.
Okay.
So I'll browse a file.
So by the way, as you're doing that, that document is quite interesting, and it's also contextual because this is a document that lists 10 biggest challenges when it comes to security for LLMs. So it's going to be an interesting one to talk about or talk to.
To talk to. Well, let's see. It's creating smart notes. So basically, the idea is you have a document or reader or something. It could also you can also do it apparently with YouTube films or recordings. And my dog is being very enthusiastic. Okay, here we go. This is funny. And otherwise, we'll start asking questions.
Okay. Well, let's see. There's also
here we go.
some. Oh, there we go.
So it's probably making shorts of all the content. I haven't read the document, so you should be able to see if this makes any sense.
Yeah, so far it does. It looks like a summary, almost page by page ish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on. Okay. And what if we would change to the short summary? And we ask it to generate that, because maybe we did it in the wrong order. Maybe start with the short summary. Here we go.
Oh, there we go.
This is the short summary.
Okay. It looks like it sort of done it right. It used some of the code, like it used codes with some of them, like LLM 01 for the prompt injections, but then it summarized the other ones.
Okay, so far it looks quite useful.
Yeah, to some extent, because when I'm looking at it, it's mixed the actual description of the issues with the solutions, as you can see, right?
Yeah.
One hand, it talks about what the prompt injection, what it is, and then on the other hand, it says how to prevent something, right? So, if I were really evaluating it, that would be a bit of a problem for me, because I would either expect this to generate a summary of all the possible vector attack vectors, like prompt injection, and a short description of what it is, then insecure output handling, and a short description of what it is, and then the other ones. But here you've got a mix of what it is with suggestions of what to do to prevent some of them, right? So
it's funny because I previously I put in a book, and it did the same thing to the book, to the content of the book, sort of mixed stuff up.
I would definitely say that the prompts need some love, probably.
Well, let's try a prompt here. So we can ask a question, or we can use an example. So you wanna?
Yeah, let's ask a question.
Okay. Prompt injection or something? I see it.
Can you give? Let's ask a question. Can you give an example of attack scenario with prompt injection? Let's use that, because that will actually use the keywords that are in the paper.
Can you give
an example attack scenario
of an attack scenario?
Using
prompt injection.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see what it comes up with. Should be
and please, then we go a little bit further. Also, because I would be curious if it just takes it from the document or finds stuff on the internet.
Okay.
Because I didn't put on search the web, and then we can turn on search the web after that.
Cool.
Also, give us the code to do it. Let's see what it does. Okay, does this make sense to you?
Yeah, it literally quotes the document.
Okay, so that's pretty good. Now we're gonna turn on search the web and ask the same question.
Oh, see how it responded the last sentence. The code to do this would depend on the language. The question is, can you continue the conversation here with in that same context?
Here we go. The code to perform the attack would involve using a command line interpreter, for instance, an unsanitized user supplied input, which would then result in command and argument injection attacks. The code would also utilize the script engine API to evaluate user supplied input and allow attackers to execute their own code. Additionally, the code would need to involve deserialization in order to create objects from a byte stream, and this would allow for malicious code injection vulnerabilities. And here it becomes interesting. We get references. I find that interesting.
It certainly is, although I think that it doesn't necessarily. I think it's a mix of the prompt injection and some other injection attacks.
Yeah, but what do you think of the quality of the output?
I think it's slightly hard to read, right? But generally, it's at the moment, well, just quickly looking at it, it's hard to assess. I would be careful with this one. I would definitely second, uh, double check it. Can you actually ask it to give us the code for prompt injection in JavaScript? Let's try that because
Hold on. Can you give me the code for prompt?
actually let's test the context. Don't put the prompt injection in there. Just the code in JavaScript. Let's see if it continues the conversation.
Okay. JavaScript. Nope. Oh, hold on. It's here underneath. Okay, it says here, unfortunately, I cannot give you the code in JavaScript as I'm not a programmer. However, I can provide you with some resources to help you learn how to write JavaScript code. Okay, we didn't ask for this.
Super.
JavaScript for prompt injection. Let's make it more concrete.
I think it actually has. I think it sounds to me like it has guardrails set within its system prompt that specifically say I'm not a programmer. Generally, when you see I cannot give you something because I'm not X, that suggests that somebody has put in. Yeah. That's actually quite cool that you're getting all of these references. So I think that this is a definite plus, especially with the web. It's hard to say at the moment whether they make sense because we would need to look at them and assess whether they are contextually relevant. But I think it's an interesting way of augmenting the responses, especially for educational purposes, to say, hey, by the way, look here, here, and here. Because even if there is hallucination within the output, then the user has the capability to actually go and look at some online resources. The only question I would have is, what's the relevance, and is there a good relevance with those responses?
What I would like to do is, I agree. What I would be interested in is, can you create a 10-question test to test my knowledge
That's a good one.
of the document, and give the right answers at the end. Let's see what it does. So now it's generating something.
One thing that I definitely don't like is the amount of sliders that you have on your screen at the moment.
Yeah, it's too much. I agree. This is funny. I ask it to make a 10-question test. Yes, you can create a 10-question test to test your knowledge of document. You can use a multiple choice test generator. The test generator will allow you to create questions based on the material in the document and provide multiple choice answers for each question. At the end of the test, you can read. That's not what I asked.
Well,
so it says, can you?
Please,
just give me.
Just type. Yeah, just type. Create the test, and I would remove the whole thing and just say create the test for me.
Yeah, but it doesn't remember.
You sure?
Yeah, we just saw that.
Okay.
Let's see what it does now.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I would like, the number one thing that I would expect here is that the contextual window is kept, especially if it's chat interface, right? You don't expect your chatbot to forget the last thing that you said
I
or it
agree.
said.
Here, sure. Here are, it's actually creating questions. 10 questions. What is the purpose? Blah, 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 blah. And well, it doesn't completely, I said to give the answer at the end. It interpreted at the end of each question.
Mm-hmm.
So it shows how specific you need to be in order to get the right output. And
And
I
also
think,
it's sort of, and I know this is a hard challenge, but it didn't focus on the topic of the thing. It sort of focused on creating questions for things that are almost auxiliary to it, like what's the version of the document? Yeah, it's 0.5, right? But that's not the relevant thing, right?
and the other thing is I asked for 10 questions and it gives me 5.
Yep.
So I think that the if you want to make this easy for educational purposes, the prompting or what's behind it should be better in order to make it easier for the users.
Yeah, and
Because
the output is a bit
wobbly, I would
yeah,
say.
well, let's say that. And also, you know, when you're asking for questions and you have lists, then you would expect them to come as a nicely formatted list rather than this blob of text that is hard to read.
So what if I change this to multiple choice test?
Mm.
Let's see what it does. It's annoying, the slider thing. It's really, so we do a lot of work.
So
There's no delete button knop. I'm
yeah,
saying it in
and
Dutch.
yeah, yeah, and also, you know, if you're ever creating a chatbot interface, do not put the input uh, text box at the top while the responses are at the bottom. This is just such a bad UX.
I agree. Okay, multiple choice. What is the purpose? And then it says A, B, C, D. Okay.
Okay, I did that, yeah.
Oh, and then it gives the right answer after it.
If it was formatted properly, that would actually be quite good.
Well, if they would complete immediately, you would say, do you want to have input be inputted in to be input or put in a special application to do this? For instance, a typeform thing that comes out. The software, the technology can easily do that.
Yeah, and also, you know, it would be useful. Like what I would expect from a solution like this is also, especially if I'm a student, right? I'm using this for research. I would expect it to at least give me the possibility to save it to Word, for example, or something of that sort, or to copy the thing and so that I can paste it somewhere. So there are definitely quite a few things that could be improved here.
Let's ask it, how should I study this document? So let's see if it can tell me how to learn this. Should I study? Shoot, I forgot.
Oh, no, normally it would be fine. That's the nice power of LLMs is that if you make a typo, it will still mostly understand what you're asking about, right?
Yeah, and it picked it up.
There you go.
Okay, to best study this document, it is recommended to carefully read through the uploaded material and take notes on key points. Additionally, additionally, research any topics that may be unfamiliar and use critical thinking to understand the scope of the document.
What a good answer.
It's also help, yeah, very bad, to break the material into section and focus on one part at a time. So let's see if we could use the answer and have it do it for us. Because if you can tell me how to do it, why don't you do it for me? Does that make sense? Could you create, no, not
I
create,
would actually
create
ask it. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
command. Yeah, we get the same stupid mistake. Create notes on key points, additional research into that may be not well explained. And just give a sense not well explained. Okay.
What we can do, because
Yeah.
this has the critical thinking mentioned. What we can do is a bit of a prompting thing at the end. Just say think step by step, and it will be interesting to see if that
Step
is being.
and show the steps. Show the steps. Okay. And then we say, do we still ask him to break the material into sections? No,
Oh,
we'll just take that out.
let's just.
Okay, let's see what it does. Too many sliders, I fully agree. There's also this thing here, it's called bionic reading mode. I have no idea what it is. I would assume that if you introduce a new software, you put this little question mark here that explains what it is.
Yeah, I think that's the making the first few letters in every word bold, which helps people read it faster.
I saw an article on that. I tried it. It actually works.
Mm-hmm. Tried it
Um,
myself as well.
okay. Create notes on keyboard. Additional research. Okay, that's what we asked. Then the research process entails a number of organized steps that a researcher must take in order to provide knowledge that will be valued by the project and concentrate on the pertinent topic. This sentence sort of kills me. Sorry.
This formatting is so bad. It's just hard to.
Yeah, basic and applied research can be conducted in a variety of ways. The following steps outline is this is too much text. Outline a simple and effective process for conducting both basic and practical research. This is a whole theoretical approach, but it does nothing with the document. It's really
Yeah, and
interesting.
you didn't actually get what you were asking for before, which is create notes on the key points, right?
Of the document, I'm gonna ask it. You need to be. You would assume you could be a little bit less specific, but you need to be basically you're busy
And
prompting.
and see, this is the thing, you know, the working with contexts is not easy when it comes to these solutions. And this is something that, you know, we've been working on at utter.one, and we have been discussing because we've built a framework for ourselves to manage different contexts for LLM based assistants or hybrid assistants. Uh, we actually called it Cactus, and it's quite likely that we're just going to open source it so that, you know, we just give it away to the community to try soon, and see, maybe it's going to be helpful for other people, because, you know, that so far has been the biggest challenge, is to get that. And this is a good example. It's like to get it right is not an easy task. It's not something that you can just get out of the box with LLMs.
What do you think of this result?
I don't think that we actually got what we were asking for. Still, we
In
actually,
general, right?
yeah, we actually got an instruction on how to create notes rather than the notes from that document.
I agree. So
And again, it's badly formatted. It's such a pain to read these huge blobs of text that are not formatted, that even have points like within it, just not properly displayed.
this one, yeah, I agree. It makes it very, very hard. Let's go back to bionic reading mode. I was really curious what it does.
There it goes.
Well, this doesn't help. Did you see what happened?
Well, I guess it follows uh, the rules for the bionic reading mode. I'm not too familiar with those. It doesn't do it for the original text though.
Nope. So, wow, they made almost every word completely. Here, you see, almost every word completely dark.
Mm.
That's not very, I don't think that's very helpful.
I'm not sure, actually. Not sure if that would help me. Um,
This,
but who knows?
no.
Maybe there are some people who benefit from that. So it's good that you can switch it on and you can switch it off. So if you like it, then you're good, and if you don't like it, you're good as well.
Now we know the software can do more the same thing with YouTube films, but it's the same principle.
Mhm.
Do you think this is, all in all, if we zoom out, very helpful for students or not there yet?
I so the comparison that forms in my head is the comparison to Claude 2 from Anthropic, right? Where you can
Right?
drop a document and you can get a summary, you can ask questions about it, and
And it does it well, by the way.
it does it well, yes. So this fades in comparison. Definitely, a tool that could be useful. It needs to focus on how it presents the data and the general user experience of the interface. But also, the quality of the output is
Not there yet.
leaves a bit to be wished for, I guess. Especially that it doesn't really respond to what we were asking for. Even if we changed the prompt or what we were asking for a couple of times.
I
So
fully
yeah,
agree. What I do love is the fact that they give the references where
yeah,
they got the information from. And I think that is a good move. And that's what we also need in AI applications to understand where did you get your information, and that we could study with reference to what was said earlier, whether that was actually there or it imagined stuff.
yeah. As long as these references actually are the things that it used to collect the data. Although to me, the speed of the responses suggests that it probably didn't analyze all of the pages. But even if they're relevant to the response, that it's definitely a useful tactic, and I agree. I like that as well.
We can discuss the quality. We don't know, but the idea
Yeah,
is very good. I
yeah,
think that is very helpful.
agreed.
And there might be guardrails in there for the prompt injection part. We don't know.
It looks like there are some guardrails because it refused to provide code for us, which might be a really good conscious decision on the part of the makers of this particular solution, because they didn't trust that the code would be good enough. The generated code would be good enough to be used by students. So these conscious decisions to put guardrails are generally something that I do like within the chatbots, as long as they're not trying to limit the functionality, beyond um, the realm of usability
Yeah,
of the
I
tool.
agree. What is also interesting, if you look at the languages they can handle: English,
Yeah.
Spanish, German, French, Serbian, Arabic, Portuguese, Italian, Japanese, Russian, Vietnamese, Dutch, Swedish, Chinese, and Hindi. No Polish, sorry. And it's funny they should have Serbian but not Polish. I mean, there's more Polish people than Serbian people.
Well, maybe they had people who could collaborate with them who are Serbian.
That could be the case. That
That's
doesn't
that's
say
that's
here.
another yeah that's another good indication, is if they took the time to verify their solution, because right now it's fairly easy for people who are creating with LLMs to just say, oh, we're available in any language, right? The problem with that is you generally need to do some tests, and you need to be mindful. The prompts generally need some love when it comes to different languages as well, because some meanings can be different. There are techniques where, when we've been using them as well, is when we actually have your system prompts in English, but in general, the whole conversation is in another language. But that poses a whole set of different challenges in itself. So, might be a good indication that they were mindful about the support for languages rather than just slapping everything on.
Okay. Um, Sorry. I think we've seen enough. You agree?
Indeed. Yep.
Okay, so I stop sharing. Um, Michal, if you could give an advice to the people looking at AI, incorporating it either in their conversational AI projects or in a corporate environment, if they where should they start? Because it's really difficult for them. And how do you convince, as a conversation designer, how do you convince your clients that it's actually a good point in time to start experimenting, as you said before?
Well, the key is to find workflows and places where the risk factor is not as significant as it would be in in a situation where you go to your client or your employer and say, let's completely swap out the main chatbot that we have for our brand on our webpage, right? If you approach the project from that perspective, it's going to be scary to anyone, and it should be scary to you as well, right? But there are so many different possibilities when it comes to using AI and LLMs in these small areas where you could make an improvement of a single process, or you can make an improvement of a single conversation to be had with a customer. And these are the areas where it's really good to experiment. It's really good to get through that learning curve of using LLMs. Practice setting up guardrails. See where it fails. You're not going to learn in any other way.
Thank you. I think that is useful. Um, and one last thing. If you could design the ideal situation or ideal model for your customer, I know it's not out there yet because it doesn't exist yet, but what would it look like if you could build an application to do everything for that customer in terms of conversational? Would you use an existing chatbot platform and connect LLMs and other and I'll use other models to it, or would you just start with a blank page and build a new world?
Well, to start with, my ideal scenario would be where we have the capabilities and the necessary means to build a vertical LLM, vertical model, or fine tune a model that is dedicated for that particular customer, a model that can be hosted offline for that customer as well. It's sort of, if you think about it, it's sort of similar to what Bloomberg did with Bloomberg GPT. They used the pile to train it with like the general knowledge, but they also used the other half of the training data is actually the data that they've been acquiring and gathering and producing over the years. And this is where I see the power in the future is, a lot of those smaller vertical models that are dedicated to specific either niches or specific even brands and their niches, because that is what will give the most contextual answers to the customers of the brand that employs it. At the moment, I think for a lot of brands, I mean, maybe not for the biggest ones, but for a lot of brands, it's prohibitively expensive, and also the knowledge is not there in the market to be able to like easily hire a team to do that. But this is where it would be going, and my ideal scenario is a CX experience where a user, a customer of a brand can just come in and talk to the brand in a way that they would be talking to a customer rep, where they can actually get help, where they can get a refund if they need to, where they can get information about their plan, their product, their whatever is the domain of that particular company. And I think this is where we're effectively going with these solutions. It's almost like being able to also access that through a smart speaker that you have in your car, that you have in your home. We tend to forget about those devices, but there's a ton of devices like that we have everywhere. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to have a skill on Alexa takes you to your customer using your customer, brand voice. But in a way that, we're now getting used to for ChatGPT, talk to you freely, and allow you to pretty much do anything that a customer service rep would help you with.
Sounds like a feasible vision on the future, and I can't wait until it's there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, Michal, thank you very much for being on the show. I enjoyed it, and thanks for sharing your vision. And I'm pretty sure we'll meet again, and maybe if all those solutions are out there, we'll do it again and then review those.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation.
No, thank you very much for being here.
It was fun. Thank you.
Same here.